11. Mr. Roy, you recognize for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman and thank all of the witnesses for your time and for being here and for your service. Obviously, there were some disagreements when we were debating the PACT Act. I stated some of my colleagues stated some. And regardless of some of the reservations, and I think they were reasonable reservations, we're all here now trying to figure out how to support implementation and get it done the right way within that framework, notwithstanding potentially maybe some changes in the future. And in September, as you all know, I led a letter with 44 of my colleagues asking for regular briefings. I appreciate that we've been engaging in those briefings. I hope those will continue. This is of the utmost importance, and I appreciate your all's work to fulfill that request. One of my biggest concerns with the PACT Act was as you know, as I stated publicly, the creation of the Toxic Exposure Fund that put billions of dollars on mandatory spending and kind of put it out there on autopilot. And because of that provision that creates or expands a VA program that is paid for by this fund will receive a mandatory score impacting a half a dozen bills we've already marked up. I support Ranking Member Boss' proposal that would reclassify this as discretionary spending covered by regular appropriations. If this action is not taken, the committee will be unable to responsibly advance legislation next Congress, and our constituents deserve being able to correct that issue, in my opinion. Dr. Elnahal, it's my understanding that as of September 30th, 22, there were approximately 8.9 million veterans enrolled in the VA healthcare. And it's estimated that the PACT Act will expand eligibility for VA healthcare services and benefits to an additional 5 million veterans. Now, I still get a lot of phone calls about questions about access to care. I get a lot of requests, a lot of guys and gals pulling me aside saying that they hit walls, they hit snags, they're unable to get care. I've talked about them in this committee. I've offered meetings with some of the folks that run South Texas VA with some of my constituents who literally run into a multi-week buzzsaw unable to get care. I understand that there are horror stories and there are great stories. That's true in all respects. But you know, my question is just what are we going to do now to guarantee access to care when you're now going to have a 55% increase of people potentially able to walk through the door?
Thank you, Congressman, and I frankly share your concern about every morning and every night before I go to bed, as Mr. Jacobs mentioned, on us being able to implement this effectively while continuing to serve the current base of veterans whom we are proud to serve every day and welcoming as many new vets who qualify for these benefits as possible. We're undertaking a number of efforts to expand healthcare capacity, knowing that we're going to get this demand because of the legislation. And so one of the most critical ones is actually an effort across the country to be able to do two things: standardize the amount of time that our clinicians and specialists spend by specialty on seeing patients to make sure that we're maximizing the opportunity to bring more veterans into a daily schedule every day, and to ensure that our clinicians are spending 80% of that booked clinical time seeing veterans. We think there is tremendous opportunity to be able to increase capacity in direct care system for that. And that will be a staged implementation over the next 6 months, and we will be transparent with you about that progress. But that is specifically in place not only to improve access for our current base of veterans, but of course to prepare for that next cohort coming in from the PACT Act. We're also doing other things to make sure we're relieving our clinicians and making the bandwidth necessary for them to be able to do that. So we're looking hard at the different administrative tasks that they're doing every day, clinical reminders and alerts that may not be necessary in every case for every veteran. These things consume time for veterans. And we are also, of course, maximizing our efforts with our Reboot initiative for burnout to make sure that we're taking care of our clinicians as well. But this is going to be a key effort to expand access, and we're also prepared to make major process improvements in our community care, scheduling, and coordination efforts, because we know that's a very important avenue as well.
And that raises my next question. With 30 seconds, I'll leave you with this one. It's going to require a longer conversation, obviously. 5 minutes is tough. But on community care, what are you doing and what are the specific plans to be able to utilize community care to deal with this now 55% increase of potential customers, if you will? And what separate hearings, obviously, on Cerner, I guess now Oracle Cerner, on where we're going with, improving technology, which tends to be a massive barrier to the ability to flow in and out with respect to engaging in community care. And not asking you to get into the technical side of that, but at a service level, how are you being able to expand the use of community care given some of those barriers and hiccups? I yield back.
Well, right now, Congressman, I am not satisfied with the time it takes for veterans on average to get a community care appointment scheduled and to be seen in the community. So we're looking at that process end to end to make sure that process becomes more efficient, but also looking at all options on the table to empower veterans to take on some of the steps where we think that our processes are taking too long. So veteran-initiated scheduling, online scheduling, we're trying to maximize those options as much as possible. And as those options become available to veterans, we'll make sure you're aware and this committee is aware to make sure that veterans are taking advantage of that. And we're also, of course, looking at our community care network contracts to expand network adequacy to maximize the options that veterans have.
Thank you, Doctor. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Mr. Pappas, you're recognized for